Frank Wilson settled gently into his first-class seat, a quiet smile spreading across his face as joy filled his heart. It had been 3 long years since he'd last seen his beloved grandson, the one who gifted him the special ticket, hoping to make their reunion unforgettable. Frank carefully adjusted his jacket and leaned back comfortably, anticipation dancing brightly in his eyes. But suddenly, his peaceful moment was shattered. Emma Carter, a flight attendant with a stern demeanor, swiftly approached him. Her piercing eyes narrowed suspiciously as she stopped right beside Frank, speaking loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear clearly. "Excuse me, sir. May I see your ticket, please?" Frank looked up, startled yet polite. He quickly pulled out the ticket from his pocket, handing it to Emma with a respectful nod. Without thoroughly checking the details, Emma glanced briefly at it, shaking her head decisively as she raised her voice again. "I believe you're sitting in the wrong seat. This is first class. Please move immediately to the back of the plane." An uncomfortable silence instantly settled over the entire cabin. Passengers turned their heads, shock and disbelief etched clearly on their faces. Frank quietly stood up, his heart heavy with humiliation, but his dignity remained intact. Before he moved, Frank discreetly took his phone from his jacket, quickly typing out a brief but crucial message, then silently began his walk toward the back of the plane. Emma stood there, a smug smile spreading across her lips, convinced she had handled the situation perfectly. Yet, before the plane could even take off, an urgent call echoed loudly through the cockpit, startling the pilots. Moments later, a serious voice resonated through the intercom, filling the cabin with tension. "Flight Attendant Emma Carter, report immediately to the cockpit. This is an order from headquarters." The announcement shattered Emma's confidence. She froze in place, heart racing, as every passenger's gaze turned toward her, curiosity and judgment piercing her from all sides. Whispered conversations arose, their curiosity impossible to hide. In the cramped seat at the back, Frank quietly sat down, the hurt still fresh in his heart. The tight space didn't trouble him nearly as much as the humiliation he'd just endured. A young woman next to him gently leaned over, concern evident in her eyes. "Sir, are you okay? That didn't seem right at all." Frank offered her a warm, reassuring smile, his voice calm despite the pain lingering in his heart. "Don't worry, dear. I'm fine. Sadly, this isn't the first time something like this has happened, but what truly matters is how we choose to handle it." At the same moment, Emma, completely unaware of how drastically things were about to change, heard the captain's stern voice calling out through the intercom. "Flight Attendant Emma Carter, report to the cockpit immediately. There's an urgent call from corporate headquarters for you." Emma froze, her face draining of color, her confidence evaporating instantly as reality struck her with crushing force. The authoritative tone from the cockpit told her something was terribly wrong. With every eye in the cabin fixed upon her, Emma felt her once unshakable authority slipping away, replaced by an overwhelming feeling of dread that threatened to swallow her whole. Inside the cockpit, Captain Reynolds handed her the receiver, his expression grave and unreadable. "Emma, headquarters wants to speak directly to you, immediately." Her fingers trembling, she brought the phone up to her ear. On the other end, a sharp, authoritative voice spoke without hesitation. "This is Mark from corporate headquarters. Emma, did you just remove Mr. Frank Wilson from his first-class seat?" She tried desperately to remain composed, quickly offering her explanation. "Yes, sir, I thought he was in the wrong seat, so..." Mark's voice cut her off sharply. "Did you verify his ticket through the system or speak to the gate agent before making your decision?" Emma's throat tightened painfully. I didn't think that was necessary, sir." His voice grew even colder. "You should have thought twice, Emma. Frank Wilson isn't just a long-time first-class passenger. His grandson, David Wilson, is part owner and executive at our airline. You've publicly humiliated someone of great importance. Your careless action has created a serious issue. You need to understand how grave this situation is." Emma stood motionless, the phone pressed tightly against her ear, her heart sinking with each word. Emma felt her breath catch sharply, her entire body frozen in place. Those words had landed like a cold bucket of water, washing away every bit of pride and confidence she'd ever had. Before she could even respond, Mark's voice returned, relentless and decisive. Right now, you will walk back and publicly apologize to Mr. Frank Wilson in front of all the passengers. This is not a request, it's a direct order from senior leadership. After the plane lands, you will appear before the board of directors to explain your actions." The line went dead. Emma stood motionless for several seconds, feeling herself slowly sinking into an endless abyss with no escape. She turned toward the cockpit door, aware that every passenger was waiting on the other side, their curious eyes piercing through her dignity. Until now, she had always been the one in control, commanding the cabin with absolute authority. But now Emma faced a very different reality, a truth she had ignored for far too long. Stepping out of the cockpit, Emma's pale face reflected the heaviness in each step as she slowly approached Frank Wilson. The distance was only a few feet, yet for Emma it felt impossibly long. For the first time, she understood that true power didn't belong to those in positions of authority. It resided in the dignity, kindness, and integrity that Frank Wilson possessed. A heavy silence fell over the cabin as Emma stopped before Frank. His eyes met hers, calm yet powerful. Emma lowered her head, her voice trembling as she spoke softly. "Mr. Wilson, I'm deeply sorry for treating you so disrespectfully. I was wrong." Her apology echoed clearly through the silence. Frank regarded her without anger, yet his gentle gaze only intensified her shame. "Miss Carter, I accept your apology, but please remember, behind every ticket, there's a human being worthy of respect. I hope you've learned that today." Emma stood there quietly, feeling the painful weight of shame and regret spreading through her with each passing second. She knew this moment would become a lasting wound, not just in her career, but deep within her own dignity and sense of self. The airplane cabin seemed to freeze after Emma's heartfelt apology. She turned away, her steps drained of all strength. The passengers sat quietly, reflecting on what they'd just witnessed. Before, Emma had represented professionalism, strength, and unwavering confidence. But now, that same woman who had once commanded respect was reduced to a fragile shadow, walking away filled with shame and remorse. Frank watched her go, feeling no anger, only profound sadness. He'd experienced this before, too many times, yet he could never get used to the sharp pain of being judged solely by his appearance, by his skin color, by assumptions rather than character. He turned silently toward the window, trying to hide the ache deep within his heart. Meanwhile, Emma returned to the serving area, her hands shaking as she tried to pour a cup of water. The water overflowed, spilling onto the floor, and as she desperately tried to clean it up, her panic grew, making the situation worse. For the first time, she felt completely powerless. A young colleague approached gently, placing a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder, whispering softly, "Emma, let me help you. Are you okay?" Emma attempted a weak smile, but the tears welling in her eyes betrayed her true feelings. I'm fine. It's just that I've made a mistake so huge that I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to fix it." The younger flight attendant looked at Emma with genuine compassion, her voice gentle yet wise beyond her years. "Everyone makes mistakes. What's important is what you choose to do afterward. Perhaps you've lost something precious today, but you've gained a lesson far more valuable." Emma stared at the young woman, her words offering a faint glimmer of hope, but it wasn't enough to erase the pain and fear engulfing her heart. Inside the cabin, an elderly passenger broke the heavy silence. Why did we allow him to suffer such injustice? None of us stood up to defend him. His words shook everyone awake. A middle-aged woman nearby turned quietly, speaking with sorrowful honesty. "I've seen this happen too many times. We always stay quiet, thinking it's not our business. Until one day, it happens to us." Whispers filled with regret and self-reflection spread through the cabin. Frank heard every word. He remained quiet, yet a part of him felt a gentle relief, knowing that at least some had recognized their mistake and finally understood his pain. At the back of the plane, Emma leaned against the wall, overhearing these hushed conversations. Each word pierced her heart like invisible blades. She felt ashamed, not just before Frank, her colleagues, or the executives, but before her own conscience, something she had ignored for far too many years. Her heart shattered into countless tiny fragments, each piece filled with bitter regret that she could no longer run away from. The intercom crackled once more, announcing the plane's descent. Emma knew clearly what awaited her once she stepped off the aircraft today, an undeniable truth she couldn't escape. Yet, what hurt her most wasn't the fear of losing her job or reputation. It was the realization that she had lost something far more precious, the kindness and respect every human being deserves. As the plane began its slow descent, Emma understood one thing very clearly. She was no longer the person in control on this flight. Instead, she had become the one awaiting judgment, forced to confront the heavy consequences of her own actions. It was a bitter, late awakening, yet absolutely necessary for her to rediscover herself. Emma gently closed her eyes, feeling hot tears silently roll down the proud face she'd always worn. In this moment, she could only whisper one more apology, not to anyone else, but to herself, the very person she had neglected for so many years. The airplane gradually lowered, the evening sunlight filtering softly through the windows, bathing the cabin in a gentle golden glow. Yet, the serene atmosphere outside stood in stark contrast to the storm of emotions raging within Emma. She turned silently toward the exit door, her eyes staring blankly into the emptiness before her. Next to her, Ashley, her younger colleague, gently placed a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder, voice filled with sincerity. "Emma, the plane is about to land. Are you ready?" Emma looked up at Ashley, the young woman whose eyes still held the innocence of someone who had never made the kind of mistakes Emma had. Suddenly, Emma saw herself many years ago, a hopeful, kind person, full of dreams. Time and power, however, had slowly stripped away her best qualities. Emma struggled to speak, her voice breaking softly. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready again, Ashley." Emma avoided Ashley's gaze, afraid that her colleague's pure eyes would deepen her shame. Right then, a soft yet clinical voice came over the intercom, a stark reminder of the harsh reality awaiting her. "We have landed safely. Passengers, please remain seated with seatbelts fastened until the plane comes to a complete stop. Thank you again for flying with us." Emma exhaled heavily, her heart tightening painfully. Today's flight would likely be the final one of her career. Passengers began standing, preparing to leave. Several glanced curiously at Emma before quickly looking away, as if avoiding the discomfort of witnessing her obvious downfall. In first class, Frank calmly rose, straightening his jacket and offering gentle smiles of gratitude to the passengers around him. As he passed Emma, he stopped, meeting her eyes again, this time with deep compassion and understanding. "Emma, mistakes are inevitable in life, but I truly hope today's incident has helped you realize the real value in each and every person." Emma couldn't utter a single word. Tears filled her eyes, and all she could do was quietly nod, her silent pledge both to herself and the dignified, kind-hearted man standing before her. Frank stepped off the plane, admired and respected by those around him. Watching him disappear into the terminal, Emma felt a profound respect and admiration rising within her. At that very moment, she fully grasped a vital truth. Power, status, and professionalism were utterly meaningless if one lost sight of kindness and respect for others. But before Emma could fully process these thoughts, a cold, authoritative voice from the doorway harshly brought her back to her grim reality. "Emma Carter, we're from airline security. Please remain on board after all passengers have left. Management is waiting to see you in the executive conference room as soon as you disembark." Emma startled, turning sharply to find two security personnel waiting, expressionless. Her heart pounded, anxiety mixed with fear swelling inside her. This time, she couldn't hide, couldn't justify, or escape. Her voice trembled as she replied softly, "Yes, I understand." As the final passengers exited the aircraft, the space became hauntingly empty. For the first time, Emma felt a terrifying loneliness, now that her power, pride, and misguided prejudices had completely abandoned her. The heavy footsteps of security personnel drew nearer, reminding her this was no nightmare, it was reality. Taking a deep breath, each step Emma took off the airplane felt like a slow march toward her final judgment, where she would have to answer for every action and decision she'd arrogantly believed correct. As her feet touched the jet bridge, an invisible weight pressed down heavily on her. She glanced back one last time at the plane's interior, the space that had once been her familiar territory, where she had controlled everything, now symbolized the deepest lesson of her life. Outside, the soft glow of sunset gently embraced the airport surroundings. Yet in Emma's heart, darkness had already begun. A darkness she knew would take a long time before she could find any light again. Emma's footsteps echoed down the seemingly endless corridor toward the conference room. Two security officers walked silently ahead of her, emotionless and detached, treating her as if she was already a stranger, no longer belonging to the airline she had passionately dedicated a decade to. Every step amplified her anxiety and regret. As the conference room door swung open, Emma flinched upon seeing the familiar, solemn faces of senior management. Among these powerful individuals stood a young man with bright, intelligent eyes and a composed yet commanding presence. It was David Wilson, Frank's grandson, a major shareholder and a senior executive of the airline. Emma's heart nearly stopped. She immediately understood this was the person who had received Frank's urgent message sent from the airplane during the incident. David watched Emma closely, his gaze sharp yet calm, his voice cool and deliberate as he clearly spoke each word. "Emma Carter, please take a seat." Emma took a deep, shaky breath, trying desperately to steady herself as she slowly sat down. Every pair of eyes in the room fixed on her, yet no one uttered a word. David looked directly into Emma's eyes, his voice firm and resolute. "Emma, your actions today didn't just disrespect one passenger. You insulted Frank Wilson, a man who's done more for this airline than you'll ever know." Emma opened her mouth, hoping to explain, but David quickly raised his hand, stopping her in mid-sentence. "I received a message from my grandfather shortly after the incident. Do you know what he wrote?" Emma shook her head weakly, her throat dry as she struggled to breathe. "He didn't ask me to punish you," David continued calmly. "Instead, he wrote, 'Just make sure no one else ever experiences what I did today.'" David's words hit Emma harder than anything else he'd said so far. She realized that even in his most painful moment, Frank Wilson had chosen compassion. He thought not about himself, but about preventing the same injustice from happening to others. David continued, his voice firm yet filled with profound sincerity. "I'm not here just to reprimand you, Emma. I'm here to make it clear. Our airline will never tolerate disrespect toward any passenger, regardless of who they are, where they come from, or what they look like." Another senior executive leaned forward, addressing Emma gently but sternly. "Emma, you've been with us for 10 years. We once trusted and respected you deeply. But today, your actions revealed something deeply troubling, something none of us ever wanted to see. It's a bias many of us carry unknowingly, and today you brought it into the open." Emma lowered her head, her voice trembling as tears filled her eyes. "I know I was wrong. I have no excuses. I can only sincerely apologize. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment, and I deeply regret the pain I've caused." David sighed deeply, his gaze softening slightly, yet unwavering. "Emma, from this moment forward, you are suspended indefinitely. The board will soon meet to consider terminating your employment. This airline cannot and will not tolerate discrimination or disrespect toward any passenger, regardless of appearance, background, or class." Emma swallowed hard, feeling her world collapse piece by piece. David stood, stepping toward Emma, looking directly into her eyes with an intensity that demanded she truly listen. "I genuinely hope you understand that the value of a human being doesn't lie in their outward appearance, status, or wealth, but in the dignity and respect they deserve. Perhaps today you finally learned that lesson." Emma could barely speak. She nodded silently, tears slipping down her face. David placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, just for a brief moment, then turned away. The meeting ended quietly as board members exited one by one, leaving Emma completely alone with her thoughts and regrets. It was only when she found herself alone in that quiet conference room that Emma truly confronted the painful reality of what she had become. She sat frozen, fingers clenched tightly until they turned white, as if letting go would mean losing control of all the emotions now flooding through her. For the first time, Emma fully grasped the weight of her mistake, not just in terms of her career or her reputation, but in terms of her very humanity. And now she knew clearly that her next journey wouldn't be about reclaiming her career or reputation. It would be about rediscovering herself, rebuilding her humanity, and finding the compassion she had long forgotten. Outside, evening had fully settled in, blanketing the airport in soft purple shadows. Yet for Emma, the darkness she felt inside was far deeper. She stood up, slowly walking toward the exit, avoiding eye contact, desperate to escape this place she'd once considered her second home. But just as she reached the airport's main doors, a familiar voice called out from behind. "Emma, please wait." Emma turned, surprised, and saw Ashley quickly approaching, concern filling her eyes. The young flight attendant's voice was gentle, filled with compassion. "Emma, are you okay? Do you want to talk?" Emma forced a sad, weary smile, shaking her head slightly. "Thanks, Ashley, but right now, I just really need to be alone." Emma took a deep breath, struggling to steady herself as she slowly sank into the chair. Every pair of eyes in the room fixed firmly upon her, yet no one said a word. David stared straight at her, his voice clear, firm, and resolute. "Emma, you didn't just mistreat a passenger today. You humiliated Frank Wilson, a man who's given more to this airline than you can possibly understand." Emma opened her mouth to explain, but David raised a hand, stopping her immediately. "I received a message from my grandfather shortly after the incident. Do you know what he wrote?" Emma remained silent, unable to respond, her heart sinking further into dread. David's voice softened, but each word still pierced her deeply. He wrote just one simple request. "Please make sure no one else has to suffer the injustice I faced today." Even at his lowest moment, my grandfather's only thought was of others, not himself. Emma felt as if she'd been struck by lightning. In that instant, she realized Frank had given her something far greater than judgment. He had given her compassion, and with it, a lesson she desperately needed to learn. David continued, his voice calm but firm. "Emma, this meeting isn't just to punish you. It's to make clear that this airline can no longer tolerate treating passengers without dignity or respect, regardless of their appearance or status." Another executive gently interjected, her voice compassionate yet stern. "Emma, you've worked here for 10 years. Many of us once admired your professionalism, but today revealed a harsh truth. One many of us unconsciously carry. You showed us that prejudice isn't always intentional, yet it causes real pain all the same." Emma lowered her head, tears welling up in her eyes, her voice trembling softly. "I know I was wrong. I have no excuses. All I can offer is my sincere apology. I never intended to cause harm, but my assumptions led me to do exactly that." David's voice softened slightly but remained decisive. "From this moment, you are suspended indefinitely. The board will convene soon to decide your future with this airline." Emma swallowed painfully, the weight of her actions finally hitting home. David rose, stepped closer, and locked eyes with her, quietly emphasizing each word. "I hope you carry this lesson with you, Emma. True worth isn't measured by appearances or position, but by character, compassion, and dignity." Emma nodded silently, tears filling her eyes. David placed a gentle hand briefly on her shoulder before turning away. The room emptied, leaving her alone with nothing but silence and regret. Emma sat motionless in that empty boardroom, feeling the crushing weight of the harsh reality she'd created for herself. In this silence, she faced the undeniable truth of what she had become. Now she knew the hardest journey still lay ahead, not rebuilding her career or restoring her reputation, but rediscovering the kindness and respect she had long forgotten. As the evening settled over the airport, darkness gathered in Emma's heart, eclipsing the comforting lights outside. Her hands clasped tightly, trembling under the burden of shame and remorse. She wished desperately that this day had never happened, but knew she could never escape its consequences. Emma rose slowly, forcing herself toward the exit. Colleagues averted their eyes, afraid to meet hers, as if her shame were contagious. Just as she reached the airport exit, a gentle voice stopped her. "Emma, wait." Turning around, Emma saw Ashley standing there, eyes full of genuine kindness and compassion. Ashley stepped closer, speaking softly yet firmly. "Emma, mistakes are part of being human. What matters isn't the mistake itself, it's what you choose to do with your life afterward." Ashley's words broke through the darkness surrounding Emma like a thin beam of hope. Emma looked deeply into Ashley's sincere eyes, nodding gently. "Thank you, Ashley, but right now, I need to be alone." Yet Ashley didn't leave immediately. Instead, she gently stepped closer, her voice gentle but insistent. "Emma, it doesn't matter what you've done. What matters most is who you choose to become from now on." Those words penetrated Emma's heart, a faint yet desperately needed glimmer breaking through her overwhelming despair. She nodded again, grateful beyond words. Returning to her car, Emma sat in the suffocating silence, tears flowing freely. She wasn't crying over the job she'd lost or the pride she'd forfeited, but rather for the cold, harsh realization of who she'd allowed herself to become. Her phone buzzed, lighting up with messages, but one stood out, her mother's heartbreaking words. "Emma, I saw everything. I never thought I'd raise someone capable of such cruelty. How did this happen?" Emma's heart shattered anew. There were no words to justify or soothe her mother's disappointment. She picked up the phone, struggling to respond but ultimately setting it down helplessly. No words could heal what she had broken. But suddenly, her phone vibrated again, displaying another new message, one from Frank Wilson himself. "Emma, I want you to know I hold no anger. Today, please remember this. Always see others through your heart, not just your eyes. I wish you peace." Emma's hands trembled. Frank's message, filled with compassion from the very person she'd hurt the most, provided a small, hopeful lifeline. Tears streamed freely down her face again, washing away layers of pain, guilt, and regret. Emma sat quietly in her car, looking at the starlit sky. Softly, she whispered a grateful thank you toward Frank, the man she had wronged, yet who taught her life's greatest lesson. This night marked her darkest hour, but perhaps also the beginning of finding herself again. Parking outside her childhood home, Emma lingered a moment before stepping onto the porch. Before she could knock, the door gently opened. Her mother stood there, gray hair softly framing her worried face. They stared silently at each other before Emma dropped to her knees, weeping uncontrollably. "Mom, I'm so sorry for who I've become." Her mother gently took Emma's tear-stained face in her hands, offering a tender, forgiving smile. "Emma, everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that you learn from them. I'm not disappointed because you failed. I was hurt because this isn't who I know you truly are." In her mother's embrace, Emma finally let herself break completely. It was painful, but also deeply healing. She understood clearly that even if the world turned its back on her, her mother's love would remain steadfast, guiding her toward redemption. Emma knew this would be the hardest journey yet, one to reclaim her humanity, dignity, and compassion. But for the first time, she felt truly ready. "Emma, I just spoke with my grandfather. He wants to see you again tomorrow morning in my office. He wants to talk with you directly. I sincerely hope you won't miss this opportunity." Emma froze, her breath catching in her chest. Part of her felt an overwhelming fear at the thought of seeing Frank again. But another part, surprisingly stronger, felt relief and anticipation. This wasn't just an ordinary invitation. It was a precious chance to sincerely apologize and begin repairing the damage she had caused. Seeing her hesitation, her mother gently smiled, encouraging her softly. "Emma, sweetheart, go see him. Never miss an opportunity to apologize and thank someone who's taught you your most valuable lesson." Emma looked into her mother's warm eyes and nodded firmly. "You're right, Mom. I'll go." She hugged her mother tightly. For the first time in days, Emma's heart felt lighter. A new feeling had begun taking root, a quiet courage, genuine gratitude, and a burning desire to fix what she had broken. Stepping away from her mother's comforting embrace, Emma went into her small childhood bedroom. She opened the window, letting the gentle silver glow of moonlight fill the room. In that quiet, luminous moment, she whispered a promise to herself. "From tomorrow onward, I won't be the same Emma I used to be. I will change." That night, Emma slept peacefully for the first time in years, not because everything was magically okay, but because she finally felt ready to face her mistakes head-on. It wouldn't be an easy journey, but she was determined to walk it. And somewhere in the depths of that long night, Emma realized clearly for the first time that true light never came from the outside. Instead, it always emerged from courage, honesty, and forgiveness within one's own heart. Only this inner light was powerful enough to banish life's darkest shadows. When morning came, the city was softly bathed in warm golden hues of sunrise, wrapping the buildings in gentle light. Emma drove toward David Wilson's office, her heart pounding with every mile. Today she dressed simply, no longer in her elegant flight attendant uniform, but strangely, she felt more at ease than ever before. Emma knew this meeting would be the most significant encounter of her life. Entering the bright, elegantly modern office, Emma saw David waiting patiently, and beside him stood Frank Wilson, the man she had deeply hurt. Taking a deep breath, she approached slowly, hands trembling slightly. Frank turned, his gentle eyes meeting hers without a hint of anger or resentment. Instead, he greeted her with kindness. "Hello, Emma. I'm very glad you came." Emma stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper, filled with genuine emotion and humility. "Mr. Wilson, I don't even know how to express how deeply sorry I am. I sincerely regret treating you with such disrespect and prejudice. I let my biases cloud my judgment and hurt you deeply." Frank gently placed his aged but reassuring hand on her shoulder, speaking with quiet wisdom and kindness. "Emma, I didn't ask you here just for your apology. I called you here because I want you to know that I truly forgive you. Everyone makes mistakes, but not everyone has the courage to acknowledge and correct them as you're doing today." Emma choked back tears, her voice breaking with heartfelt sincerity. "You have no idea how much your forgiveness means to me, Mr. Wilson. I'm truly ashamed and deeply regretful, but I promise you, I'll never repeat that mistake. I want to become someone better, someone who genuinely respects the worth of every individual." Frank nodded approvingly, eyes filled with compassion and understanding. "I believe you, Emma. Today marks the beginning of a new life for you. But there's something else I want to do to help you through this difficult time." Emma looked up, surprised, her heart suddenly beating faster with anticipation. "What do you mean?" David finally spoke up, gently but seriously. "Emma, my grandfather and I have discussed this thoroughly. We know you can't return to your former role, but we both believe strongly in second chances. If you're willing, we'd like you to join my grandfather's charitable foundation. It won't be an easy job, but it will help you truly understand the meaning and value of kindness, compassion, and respect. Qualities we believe you have the potential to embody." Emma stood speechless, overwhelmed with gratitude and disbelief. She never imagined receiving a second chance, especially from the very person she had harmed. Tears shimmered in her eyes, filled with gratitude. I don't even know how to thank you both. I promise I'll never let you down again." Frank smiled warmly, his eyes sparkling with genuine trust. "We know, Emma, and we believe you'll do great things. Welcome to your new beginning." Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself as she slowly sank into the chair. Every eye in the room was fixed firmly upon her, yet no one spoke a word. David's gaze met hers directly, his voice firm but calm. "I'll be brief. Mistakes related to professionalism can be forgiven, but we cannot tolerate discrimination or disrespect toward passengers, especially towards someone as esteemed and respected as Mr. Frank Wilson, who has contributed immensely to this airline." Emma opened her mouth, hoping to offer an explanation, but David raised his hand, stopping her gently. "I received a message from my grandfather immediately after the incident. Do you know what he wrote?" Emma remained silent, her heart pounding heavily, and she quietly shook her head. "He didn't demand any punishment for you," David continued softly. "He simply asked us to ensure that no one else would ever face the injustice he experienced today." David's words struck Emma's heart deeply. She realized that even in his moment of hurt, Frank Wilson chose kindness and compassion over anger and revenge, qualities she had long forgotten to value. David looked directly into Emma's eyes, his voice firm yet gentle. "I'm not here to seek revenge for my grandfather. I'm here to ensure no one in this airline will ever disrespect another passenger based on appearance or status again." Another board member spoke up. "Emma, you've worked here for 10 years. We always saw you as a remarkable flight attendant and a role model for new hires. But today you've revealed a deeper issue, a hidden prejudice that, at times, we ourselves don't realize we're carrying." Emma lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. "I know I was wrong. I have no excuses for what I did. All I can say is that I am truly sorry. I allowed my own prejudice to blind me, and I hurt a good person because of it." David nodded softly, his expression softening slightly. "We see your remorse, Emma. However, this airline, and myself personally, cannot tolerate such actions. Effective immediately, your position will be suspended indefinitely. A review will determine your official employment status." Emma swallowed hard, feeling as though her entire world was collapsing. Yet, strangely enough, she felt no resentment towards David or anyone else. only towards herself. She recognized that this was the inevitable consequence of her own actions. David rose from his seat, walked over to Emma, and looked her directly in the eyes once more. I sincerely hope that after today, you understand that a person's true worth doesn't depend on appearance or status, but on their dignity and respect. You may never work here again, but I hope you never forget this lesson. Emma looked up at David, tears freely streaming down her face. I understand, David. I sincerely apologize to Mr. Frank and everyone else. David nodded gently, briefly placing a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder before turning away. As the meeting ended and everyone filed out of the room, Emma sat alone in painful silence, finally allowing the tears she had been holding back to flow freely. It was only now, sitting alone in this cold room, that Emma allowed herself to fully cry, not because she had lost her job or her reputation, but because she finally faced the harsh truth of the person she had become. And now, she understood clearly. Today marked the beginning of a long journey toward redemption. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in her life, Emma was ready to confront her mistakes and truly change. I hurt him. I hurt myself and disappointed so many people. But he taught me the most important lesson of my life. It's never too late to change, to become kinder, and to live with purpose. Emma paused briefly, looking directly into the eyes of the audience through the camera lens. I hope anyone who's made mistakes like I did never gives up. Be brave enough to stand up, take responsibility, and most importantly, never lose faith in human kindness. After the broadcast, the reaction from viewers shifted dramatically. Thousands of comments poured in, expressing empathy and admiration for Emma's courage and sincerity. In a small room, Frank and David watched the program together. They exchanged smiles filled with satisfaction and pride. Frank spoke gently. Do you see, David? A person's greatest strength isn't avoiding mistakes, but knowing how to rise up from them. David nodded thoughtfully. You were right to trust her, Grandpa. Emma is living proof of exactly that. Outside, night was falling again, but now Emma's heart was illuminated with hope. She knew the path ahead might still be challenging, yet she felt no fear. She finally understood who she was, why she was living, and most importantly, she had found her true self. Following her courageous public appearance, Emma's life began to transform significantly. She started receiving countless letters and messages from strangers. People who had been in similar situations, who had made mistakes, and were now looking for inspiration to change. Emma read each heartfelt confession carefully, recognizing that life had given her an opportunity to spread the valuable lessons she had learned through hard-earned experience. One afternoon, as Emma worked busily at the Charity Foundation office, Ashley unexpectedly appeared. The young woman walked toward Emma with a radiant smile, holding a small bouquet of flowers. Emma, I came to tell you how proud I am of you. I've never seen anyone as brave and resilient as you. Emotion overcame Emma as she accepted the flowers, hugging Ashley tightly and whispering emotionally, Ashley, I should be the one thanking you. When I had nothing left, your kindness and sincerity helped me stand back up and rediscover who I really am. Ashley stepped back slightly, her expression cheerful yet serious. But I didn't just come to congratulate you today. The airline held a meeting with senior management. They want you back, not as a flight attendant, but as an ambassador responsible for training and inspiring new flight attendants. They believe your experience is invaluable for helping the airline grow positively. Emma was stunned, feeling both surprise and excitement. They really want me back? Ashley nodded enthusiastically. Yes, and this time, not just David, but the entire senior leadership unanimously agreed, you're the perfect person. Emma, this is your chance to make amends and help many others avoid making similar mistakes. Emma reflected silently for a moment, her heart racing with a flurry of thoughts. Finally, she looked directly at Ashley with determination and sincerity. If they trust me again, I promise to give it my all. I want to use my story to create something genuinely meaningful and valuable. The next morning, Emma stepped into a large auditorium, where hundreds of new employees waited eagerly to hear her speak. Standing on stage, Emma felt momentarily anxious as she faced all those young, expectant faces. Taking a deep breath, she began warmly and sincerely. Hello everyone, I'm Emma Carter. Today, I'll share the biggest mistake of my life and how I picked myself up afterward. The auditorium fell silent as every eye focused intently on Emma, her voice clear and heartfelt, touching each listener deeply. I was once a proud and confident flight attendant, but one day my arrogance and prejudices led me to make a serious mistake, hurting a respected passenger deeply. In minutes, I lost my job, my reputation, and my self-respect. Emma paused briefly, meeting the attentive gazes of her audience, then continued more strongly. But the very person I hurt offered me a second chance with compassion, kindness, and forgiveness. He taught me that mistakes don't define who you are. How you rise and rectify them does. Today, I'm not here to discuss my failures, but to tell you all this. Kindness and compassion are the greatest strengths we possess. Thunderous applause erupted, echoing continuously. Emma felt the genuine warmth behind those applause and knew she had truly begun a new chapter in her life. From the back of the auditorium, Frank and David watched Emma speak, their faces glowing with deep pride. David turned slightly toward Frank, a meaningful smile crossing his face. You see, Grandpa? Emma isn't just proof that people can change. She's become an inspiration for countless others. Frank nodded, his eyes shining brightly with happiness. That's right, David. Sometimes the best thing we can ever do for someone is simply give them a second chance. After her talk, many people approached Emma, shaking her hand and expressing sincere gratitude for her deeply moving story. At that moment, Emma realized her life now had a far greater purpose than ever before. Later that evening, standing quietly on her balcony, Emma gazed up at the glittering night sky, smiling softly to herself. She had finally stepped out from the shadows of her past and was ready to face whatever challenges came her way with gratitude and courage. She whispered gently to herself, "Thank you, life, for giving me mistakes so I could truly learn what matters. I promise never to lose sight of those values again." Time flowed onward gently, like a tranquil river, carrying away old wounds, bringing healing and hope in their place. Emma was no longer the arrogant flight attendant she once was. She was now a woman whose heart brimmed with gratitude and an unshakable faith in humanity. Visits to community centers, schools, and heart-to-heart talks with young people had become a cherished part of her new life. On a beautiful weekend afternoon, Emma sat with Frank at their favorite cozy coffee shop. They enjoyed the rich aroma of fresh coffee, watching the city drift peacefully beneath a gentle golden sunset. Emma turned to Frank, her eyes filled with deep appreciation. "You know, Frank, every time I reflect on this journey, I can hardly believe life gave me such an incredible second chance. Without your kindness, I might still be trapped in my own mistakes." Frank smiled warmly, his voice gentle and comforting. "Emma, life is magical like that. Sometimes we need to experience darkness to truly appreciate the light. As long as we hold sincerity and kindness in our hearts, new doors will always open." Emma nodded slowly, her gaze drifting off toward the horizon, where the day's last rays were softly fading away. She felt profoundly peaceful, truly happy. And dear friends, today's story about Emma isn't just a tale about forgiveness. It's about the journey we all take to rediscover ourselves. Everyone makes mistakes, but what truly matters is whether we dare to face those mistakes, rise above them, and become better versions of ourselves. If Emma's story touched your heart today, please give this video a like, share it with others who might need a little inspiration, and especially don't forget to hit that subscribe button for Aiva Stories. The stories here don't just move you, they inspire you to live better each and every day. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon in another meaningful story right here on Aiva Stories.